Chapter 24. Arrival in spring, where is the green? Land of spring. Open sea. Naruto stood aboard the deck of a small transport barge headed for spring. He and his men had boarded it in the middle of the ocean and had calmly alerted the captain of their mission. The old man had no qualms with them, especially after they revealed they were ninja, so they had taken up a quiet residence in one of the boat's empty rooms. Naruto had gone up to the top deck, though to observe their arrival firsthand, it had been quite some time since his last arrival there. At the time, he had no idea what to expect from the frozen country, but now it was supposedly a spring paradise for tourists. With Koyuki's panicked letter though, it might not be spring for long. He thought with regret of not being able to do anything sooner. He was still masked to prevent anyone of knowing his identity, he did not want to take chances. It was rare for a Kage to leave his village, especially during war times. If someone, possibly a spy or agent for Akatsuki, found out he was heading for spring, it would spell trouble for them in the future. A strong gust blew against the ship and Naruto tightened the cloak to his body further. The Ando clothing he wore was prepared for the warm summer. Spring was apparently in, not for a cold winter. They were approaching the shore and Naruto could still see no sign of the green land he had left, merely gray or white landscape instead. The Kage turned around to see his hurricanes had gotten out as well. They gathered around behind him and observed the fast approaching land for themselves. I thought it was supposed to be springtime here, Uzumaki-sama? One of them asked. Yes, that is exactly what time of the year it's supposed to be. Something obviously isn't right here. They shifted uncomfortably. If Naruto believed something wrong, then it must have been something bad. We are approaching shore. Yelled out the captain from the raised bridge behind them. Me, check the dock for anything suspicious. Naruto ordered to the two Ranmaru who spurred into action. Yes, Uzumaki-sama. They answered swiftly as they activated their bloodline. Without masks, a person could see their eyes glow red. A small battalion of snow ninja were located within the small port city. They appear to be waiting for this ship to dock. I estimate over 20 in number, sir. The male reported and was confirmed by the female's nod. Naruto sighed in exasperation. It seems as though the rebellion has already taken place. We first must find our ninja located within the country and devise a way to get to Daimyo Kazuhana before the Ice Shinobi can. Aim, your clan are the original owners of Ice Release, yours should be superior to these imitators. I will be relying on you during the coming battles. The two Hyo clansmen stood a bit straighter and nodded in confidence with their leader's positive appraisal. We won't fail you, Naruto-sama. Naruto nodded and suddenly leaped off the ship and onto the ice-cold water that churned with a stormy disposition. The hurricanes soon followed and the seven were on their way to land with an alternate route. Naruto wished to avoid fighting as much as possible to avoid drawing attention and also to make sure he did not hurt the wrong people. If a fight broke out in the city, it was sure to lead to civilian casualties that would not be good for Yuzu's reputation. The group arrived on land and they quickly sorted out what to do next. The Uzumaki Hurricanes pulled out their map and pointed at the last known location of their shinobi. It was within the capital city with the daimyo castle. If the rebellion is taking place right now, that will surely be the loyalist stronghold. Hopefully it remains intact, otherwise we will have to fight our way in. Let's move. They disappeared into red blurs as they moved quickly through the barren white landscape. All kept silent on their journey, too busy worrying about the mission to talk. The signs of war were unsettling as they approached the capital city. Blood, dropped weapons, even a few bodies laid strewn across the snow and were slowly getting covered up by the ever-falling precipitation. Naruto could recognize some as snow ninja and others as civilian warriors, but none were alive to tell them the tale of the battle. Sir, look there. Naruto turned to his right to see a column of smoke rise into the air coming from the direction of the capital. The seven moved quickly into position on a ridge that gave them a bird's-eye view of the small palace. The column of smoke was actually a large fire that had engulfed the daimyo palace. Ironic, Naruto thought as the ice ninja actively used ice instead of fire. Another explosion rocked the city, this one instead being made of a large spike of ice crushing a small building. The Ranmaru described the chaos with an unparalleled view with their special eyes. Dozens of snow shinobi are ransacking the capital. They are indiscriminately killing civilians and destroying whatever stands in their way. It looks as though the palace has been overrun. All the fighting is within the palace itself as all the defenders outside are dead. The snow shinobi are coming in trickles, but the main force is moving quickly to the besieged area. If we do not move quickly, the daimyo will surely be killed or captured. Naruto pondered it for a moment, giving his hurricanes the chance to talk. Sir, we don't even know if this woman is still alive. We could be wasting our time trying to rescue her when she could already be dead, or even worse, this is a trap organized by the snow shinobi. They had troops waiting at the docks, maybe they knew we were coming. One of the Uzumaki suggested, his red mane of hair kept short and his hidden gray eyes burned with cynicism of the situation. They have no reason to kill the daimyo just yet, argued the female Uzumaki. She glared at her teammate for his horrid idea. They could use her as a bargaining chip or a puppet to rule the people, they can't afford to kill her. One of the Hyo scoffed and they turned towards him. Yes, because the snow shinobi obviously care about the civilians enough to rule them. You see those dead bodies, those destroyed buildings. All of those were civilian structures, they only want power and nothing else. Naruto began to scowl as the arguing grew. In both volume and hostility, the clans got along well enough, but individuals were too difficult to read. That's enough. Naruto allowed his booming voice to echo over the six before him, leading them to instantly quiet down. He looked at each of their masked faces with feigned disgust and disappointment as he had expected better. Arguing will get us nowhere. Allow your Uzukage to make the decision to go or not to go, rather than bicker like elderly men would do. Now we are going down there, and we will rescue the daimyo, prepare for combat. Naruto brushed past them as they bowed their heads in shame to his figure. Go. The seven disappeared in a flash and blurs could be seen leaping over rooftops moving quickly to the palace, where a desperate last stand took place. Kazuhana Manor. Throne room. Hold them back. Sugihara of the Uzumaki yelled out, her blood-stained Anbu armor held strong as a snow ninja attempted to thrust his kunai into her chest. Her scimitar already stained with blood, she cut off the hand holding the kunai and followed up with a slice to the man's throat. He gurgled up blood before falling onto the ground, dead. She stepped back and took a look around to see what was left of the defenders. Upon the start of the attack, the palace had over 100 samurai and over 10 loyalist snow shinobi. Add Sugihara's squad to the mix, and the defenders numbered at roughly 115 against the enemy's 200. She could only surmise that the focus of the attack was there in the capital, while small towns were being subjugated with smaller groups. What was left was around a dozen bloodied and wounded samurai and only a few loyal snow ninja left. The rest of the Anbu's squad had been cut off outside, and she knew not what happened to them, but feared the worst. These snow shinobi aren't particularly difficult to defeat when they have no snow. Sugihara thought as she pierced through the chest of another with her blade, pulling it out with a huff of breath. But they have overwhelming numbers and a surprisingly strong determination to win. She risked a glance to the top of the throne to see Daimyo Kazuhana surrounded by 3 of the strongest samurai under her command. She allowed herself a small smile underneath her mask that resembled a wildcat with purple cheek markings. Another group of snow shinobi burst through a separate entrance from the one that had so far been used, leading to a few samurai being killed in surprise. She readied herself when an explosion rocked the wall opposite the throne room and revealed a large group of snow shinobi and a gust of cold wind from the outside reaching her body. The cold made her feel goosebumps sprout, but the snow that now spread onto the floor sent chills down her spine. Oh no, they can use their ice release now. Fall back. Get back to the throne now. The few remaining soldiers under her command quickly broke into a run to stand near Koyuki as Sugihara and the snow shinobi went through hand signs simultaneously. Lava release, lava wall. Ice release, swallow snowstorm. The quickly formed lava wall encircled the high pedestal and formed around Sugihara's body to protect the defenders. The ice projectiles hit the hot lava head-on and immediately melted, showing which advanced element had the advantage. The Anbu captain wished she could smirk, but could only cringe in pain as her injuries began to catch up with her and the chakra within her faded away in sustaining the wall. Keep up the jutsu. That Yuzu shinobi can't keep up the wall for much longer, look how it crumbles. Yelled one of the snow ninja, eliciting a cheer from his brothers as the wall became smaller and smaller. Sugihara's vision blurred as her reserves left her and forced the wall to crumble, leaving nothing between her and the snow shinobi. She collapsed onto the first step of the throne seat and leaned against a solid surface, holding her scimitar with one hand and staunching the blood of her leg wound with the other. They readied another attack on the loyalists, one that was meant to annihilate those remaining. A sad smile crossed her face as she thought of her family back home and of her Uzukage. She had failed him, both in staying alive herself and keeping the daimyo alive until he arrived. "I'm sorry, Uzumaki-sama." The redhead contented herself with the odd satisfaction of watching the snow needles launch toward her body in a hail of death. The samurai above her stood in a sacrificial line to protect the daimyo with one last shield, their own bodies. Koyuki cried out in horror as the attack was launched, pleading with the ninja to stop the madness they had caused. Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of Sugihara's prone figure. She saw it was a tall man with a two-sided greatsword. The mask jolted her senses back to normal when she recognized the telltale sign of an Yuzu hurricane. He quickly lifted up his mask and without hand signs launched a river of lava into the oncoming projectiles, effectively melting them all. Her eyes widened at the man's ability. Wait, only a few select Uzumaki have the discipline required to use the bloodline without hand signs. The matriarch, Mei-sama, and her husband the Uzukage, Naruto-sama. The only others could be the Uzumaki hurricanes. I don't remember one ever having such a large sword as a weapon though. Her questions were soon answered when the figure turned towards her with his mask off, revealing the Uzukage himself. Despite her position, a proud smile crossed her face to see her leader with such a timely arrival. He quickly saw her bleeding leg wound and turned back towards the hole in the roof. "This Anbu needs medical assistance, Ranmaru, get down here." Two hurricanes appeared at either side of and quickly began to heal her wounds with practiced hands. "Uzukage-sama. What are you doing here?" Her raspy voice escaped from the dry throat, unable to lift above a whisper. "We are here to save you all, of course." He smirked before looking back at the army of ice shinobi before him who had been stunned into inaction. "Hurricanes? Combination C." A chorus of "understood" or "yes sir" originated from the roof where he had come from, and she soon saw the remaining of the elite bodyguard jump through the hole into action. Without the use of hand signs, both Hyo clansmen gathered ice chakra into a needle shape within the webs of their fingers. Soon, 5 ice needles had formed between all 10 of their fingers and they began to launch a barrage of projectiles into the snow shinobi formation. They quickly scattered to find cover, but soon found themselves walking on lava as the Uzumaki yelled out their technique. Lava release, bed of lava. While many attempted to flee, most felt their best chance to kill the daimyo was staring them in the face, and they continued towards the throne pedestal. Naruto had planned for this and stood alongside his hurricanes in a defensive ring around the structure. He readied his greatsword in front of him and yelled out a challenge to the attacking shinobi. "You will take no step farther. Uzugakura proclaims the land of spring under its protection and you will not be taking Daimyo Kazuhana as long as we stand here." The snow shinobi flinched but remained undeterred in their attack. A few went through hand signs. "Ice release, swallow snowstorm." Naruto deflected the projectiles with his large sword with some breaking on impact, while others were absorbed by the containment seals. He charged forward and sliced through the stomach of one man, twirling the sword to deflect another one's kunai. The Hyo remained back and continued to use their needles to attack, while the Uzumaki threw off their cloaks and revealed their primary weapons, scimitars. For the Uzumaki, they yelled out a battle cry and joined the Uzukage in the fray, clashing metal against ice with the rebels. Koyuki watched in wonder as the brave hurricanes fought against a people she once thought loyal to her. Their leader, the one with the large sword, interested her most of all. She had been unable to see his face but could feel his confidence and pride ooze off of him as he spoke. The hearts of his men swooned with fiery determination, while the tails of his enemies fell between their legs in terror. "I wonder who he is. If Naruto sent him then I must trust him. I sort of wish he had come in person though." Naruto cut through another snow ninja's stomach when he began to notice them retreat. The hurricanes gathered around him and waited for further orders as the enemy combatants left them alone in the castle. The battlefield was littered with the dead or dying, some bodies were melting away from the lava still on the ground. "Sir?" Naruto turned around without saying anything and headed towards Koyuki. The samurai who remained formed up around her and readied their swords for battle. They had no idea who these shinobi were and were not going to take any chances. "Stand down." The samurai looked back at Koyuki who stood up in her royal kimono and pressed past them. She was still unable to see Naruto's face clearly because his cloak's hood was still on. He was just a random warrior to her before she stood before him and bowed low. "Thank you for helping us, without you we would be dead. On behalf of my nation, I welcome you to spring. Please warrior, tell me your name." Naruto looked to see that Sugihara was up, leaning on the Ranmaru as they joined his entourage. He looked back at Koyuki who was now looking up at him expectantly. He did not want to disappoint. His sword was quickly placed onto his back, and his gloved hands moved to his cloak's hood. "My name." He started to slowly remove the cloak, not taking his eyes off of Koyuki's. "Is Naruto Uzumaki. The Shodai Uzukage." Her eyes widened as the hood came off, and the mess of blonde hair she remembered was once again in front of her. "Naruto, is that really you?" Naruto smiled at the surprised woman. He was glad to see he was missed. He knelt down and slowly lowered her back up to where she was standing in front of him. The shock had still not left her face when Naruto released her hands and let her stand on her own. "Yep, it's me, Haim. Or should I say, Daimyo." Suddenly, Naruto was assaulted by her as she clung to his hulking frame and buried herself in his chest. Naruto lost his smile and brought his arms tight around her. The others watched the reaction with surprise. "Naruto. I tried my best but I just couldn't do it." Her sobs racked her entire body, leading Naruto to almost completely envelope her in his cloak. "It's all right, Koyuki, we are going to stop this rebellion. I saved you once, I can do it again." His encouraging words gave Koyuki hope. They also made a warm feeling bubble in her gut. "He cares for me so much. And he has gotten quite handsome." Naruto saw her eyes glaze over as she looked at him. A hesitant smile crawled over his face. He did not want to offend her by rejecting her advances. She was quite a beautiful and confident woman after all. But Naruto was happily married, and he had a child. There was no way he would betray Mei. Koyuki moved up to give him a kiss on the lips. She would say it was for rescuing her, and he couldn't refuse it. After Naruto stopped the rebellion, then she would lead him to her bedchambers, and they would have some fun. This plan that she created was flawed though, as it showed when Naruto moved his face to receive the kiss on the cheek instead. The others were either surprised or relieved, depending on their knowledge of Naruto's marriage. To the samurai, it was a direct insult to the beauty of their nation. To the hurricanes, it was relief for the Uzukage that he wouldn't have to deal with Mei's temper. "Naruto? What's the matter?" Koyuki asked, not understanding why he didn't want a kiss. Naruto gently lifted her up again and held her gloved hands tentatively as he explained. "I'm sorry, Koyuki, but I am married and have a child. You are a very beautiful woman, but I hope you can understand why I don't want to cheat on my Koyuki." Naruto stopped when he noticed that Koyuki failed to lose her surprised visage, and he instantly grew concerned for her. Married?" Naruto tried to ease her shock and began to give her a quick explanation of his life for the past 5 years. Sugihara chuckled a bit at the scene but remembered that she had to find her teammates. She gently shook off the 2 hurricanes holding her steady and walked out into the frigid cold. Her teammates had last been seen holding the gates against a snow shinobi. The least she could do was gather their bodies for a proper burial. It was the least they deserved. The gate and walls surrounding the small castle were completely covered in ice. Some pieces had broken off and left the defensive measure useless. Upon reaching the gate, her eyes widened at the sight of finding no bodies whatsoever, snow or otherwise. "But we killed so many, dozens should be laying here. The snow isn't heavy enough to cover them all. Where did they go?" A frosty wind hit her again, causing her arms to instinctively move to her chest for warmth. The woman's teeth chattered, and she felt so weak for showing such sensitivity to the cold. Her outfit, like most other people living in spring for the past few months and years, had been adapted to suit the warmer climate. Now that the land was without sun nor heat, the cold snow was free to move back into the fragile nation and left everyone unprepared. Her Anbu uniform was not enough to keep her warm, and she had left her cloak within her bedchambers in the castle. She continued to wander the grounds, frantically searching for her fallen comrades. Behind her mask, her nose turned red, and she sniffed from what could only be a cold. The Uzukage would not like to see her like this. He was always so caring for his shinobi and people that he hated to see them in anything other than top condition. He would understand though. "I have to find them." "Wait. What is that?" The redhead had spotted outlines on top of a nearby building shaped like people. It looked as though they were hovering slightly off the ground though. The blizzard would not allow her to have a clear view. "Ikami? Inu? Tora? Is that you?" The figures did not move but merely swayed with the changing winds. Their odd movement concerned her, and she moved closer to investigate. It was only a few moments later before she stood in front of the figures. Moving closer, she was able to clearly make out their Anbu uniforms, ripped and bloody from the intense fighting. When she was able to see their heads, that was when she knew their fate. Her scream echoed throughout the town. Naruto was in the middle of detailing the marriage when he heard the scream. He looked around to see Sugihara gone and feared the worst had happened. Ranmaru, find the Anbu captain. The two bloodline users quickly focused their chakra and searched the blizzard for her location. I found her, sir. Follow me. The group of hurricanes moved quickly and arrived at her location to find her on her knees, blankly staring at the dead bodies of her teammates. Naruto looked at them himself, a scowl of disgust graced his features. In their haste to retreat, the snow shinobi either took their dead bodies and hung them by their necks, or they had been captured and hung. Either way, they were dead, and it made Naruto very angry. He looked down at his Anbu captain and frowned. She was just barely holding herself together before she would enter shock. He waved a hand towards the three bodies, and his hurricanes quickly set to work untying them and placing them within scrolls to be buried back in Yuzu. Naruto meanwhile went over to the Anbu captain and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. Her head barely moved to acknowledge its presence. Naruto sighed and moved his face close to her ear, rubbing her shoulder a bit to try and warm her up. I'm sorry, Sugihara, what happened to your teammates wasn't right. I will make sure those who did it will pay, but you have got to say something. You have to be strong. Her neck moved a bit, it was no doubt her trying to do something to break the awkwardness. Uzumaki-sama. I'm sorry. Sugihara began to fall forward, but Naruto was able to quickly catch her and lift her small body in his arms. He brought her up and carried her slowly back to the castle. His Yuzu hurricanes followed in silence, for it was time for morning. No one noticed the tears that fell from Naruto's cheeks on his way back, nor did anyone catch his whispered statement of apology. No, I'm sorry. Konohagakure. Hokage office. Sanada watched as the final member of the recovery squad walked in. She had ordered a meeting to be prepared as soon as her Anbu spotters reported that they had found the three tails within wave. Kakashi and Shizune would lead two squads to go and contain the beast to keep it from falling into Akatsuki's hands. You have all been gathered here for an important mission. For Konoha to solidify its place within the four-village alliance, we must contribute to the cause. That cause is defeating Akatsuki. The members of the newly made squad listened as she continued her speech. Your objective is to capture the three-tailed turtle within Wave Country. You must complete this objective with haste, because we do not know whether anyone else knows of its location. Time is of the essence, now move out. I expect nothing but success. The squad leaped out of sight and Sanada sat back into her chair, contemplating the events. My spies also told me that Yuzu had a presence on the island. I wonder how strong they have become and just how much they are willing to interfere with our business. Wave Country. Tazuna Lake. The lake was peaceful, quite contrary to the beast that lay sleeping beneath its depths. Birds chirped and monkeys squealed as the day came to its height. A deep mist began to cover the ground and lake with a thickness and foreboding to it. A few birds' nests were disturbed when figures began to hop through the branches. There were 8 in all, masked men moving under the cover of shade. Scrolls, linked together with chains and covering their bodies, all had some purpose to the squad's mission. The small katana on their backs served as their defensive weapon, however, with stealth they hoped to quickly finish their objectives without fighting. Sir, there is a chakra mist ahead. Seems to be some sort of illusion-causing type. Orders? The leader, the one with the large scroll hanging from his back, reached for the transceiver beneath his mask. Prepare for dissolution of mist, standard containment procedure. Squad B, begin setting up for the three tails containment. No mistakes. Roger. The 8 tamers burst from the tree line and made a dash across the water. 4 split off, encircling the large lake and setting up in a rough square. The other 4, including the leader, dashed forward to the center of the thickest mist. One of the men there pulled out what seemed to be a random scroll from his person and set it onto the murky surface. Hitsuji, Ushi, you. The man whispered the names of the hand signs within his mind as he did them, finishing the containment by slamming his foot onto the center seal on the scroll. The scroll created a small, swirling hole that began to suck in the white mist. The tamers kept a careful eye on the scroll as the mist was taken in and disappeared. Containment successful, whispered the leader as the hole dissipated and was followed by the kanji for containment to appear within the center seal circle. Good job, now we awaken the beast. Step 1, attract. He said to his men, who began to run to opposite sides of the lake, and he did the same. The incantations and seals were very precise with the beast control. If just one seal is off, then the hundreds that were made before were useless. Without having any other tailed beast to test their abilities, the men and the beast tamers were all green. It led them to say aloud and count each seal they created during the process. The men stopped at each one of the corners nearby where Squad B was setting up their scrolls on the ground. The leader's squad went through a number of hand signs next for another jutsu used to rouse beasts. Tori, Inu, Tori, Mi, Yu, Tori, Tatsu, Inu, Mi, Tora, Hitsuji. Secret art. Tailed beast echo. The four slammed their hands onto the water surface and a deep howl was sent into the water. The four men who made up Squad B had quickly finished their setup by this time. They had taken out their own containment scrolls and set them in front of themselves. The four sat down and crossed their legs, balancing themselves on the water and giving them better concentration. "Here it comes," yelled out the leader as the bubbles at the center of the lake intensified until the turtle itself climbed out. It seemed very angry to have been awoken so suddenly. It would be even more angry upon finding out what the tamers had planned for it. Go. Step 2, grapple and bind. The four who had used the echo then leaped into action and moved to one side of the beast. The four quickly launched multiple chakra strings from their fingers and desperately attempted to hold the beast down. At first, the three tails thrashed against their holdings and broke free numerous times. It was always taken back under control, though by the tamers. Squad B had their scrolls set up and began to focus their own chakra strings. These strings connected to the scrolls in front of them and made their way to attach onto the three tails. With these strings attached, it led to the third and final step of beast absorption. Step 3, chakra transfusion. The leader thought as he watched the other squad go through the incantations. Hitsuji, Seru, Na, Seru, Tori, Inu, Tatsu, Ushi, Tora, Mi, Na, Yu, Yuma, Yu, Ushi, Tatsu, Yuma, Hitsuji, Ushi, Tatsu, Inu, Tori, Inu, Mi, Seru, Na, Mi, Hitsuji, Yuma, Tora, I, Tori. The men listed off each hand sign as they made them, the cycle continuing into the hundreds of hand seals until its completion. The holders could begin to feel the sanbi weaken throughout the ceremony, slowly losing its chakra. As it was made of pure chakra, it began to shrink in size as the jutsu went on. Within a few hours, the entire three tails was no larger than a lily pad on the water. To think, the three tails took 6 hours. With the amount of chakra within the 9 tails, how many would it take for Kyuubi? Days, weeks? The leader thought to himself as the chakra feelers began to dissipate and Squad B finished their long jutsu. With their voices hoarse from speaking, the men relied only on their minds to complete the last verse of hand signs. Hitsuji, Seru, Na, Seru, Tori, Inu, Hitsuji. Secret art, tailed beast chakra transfusion. All 4 scrolls lit up with a neon green and the kanji for contained appeared on each signifying the capture had been successful. However, such demonic chakra could only be contained in such small sealing scrolls for so long before it broke out again. To this end, they had to move the chakra to something larger and more permanent. The squads united on the shore and Akaru, the leader of the sealing squad, took off the large scroll that had hung useless from his back. He laid it down onto the ground and unfurled it, revealing dozens of small seals and writings surrounding one large, empty circle in the middle. Above, below, and to the sides of the circles lay 4 small rectangles, the place for them to set the chakra-containing scrolls. The men laid the containers down carefully and watched as Akaru completed the final point to the operation, permanently containing Sanbi. He moved to sit in the middle circle and placed his hands in the standard ram hand sign to focus his chakra. His men assumed similar positions around the scroll. This is the most dangerous part. If I fail here, then not only will I be torn apart by the demon chakra, but my men will as well. It is the only though for us to complete the technique by being connected. Step 4. He gulped, his men looked to each other anxiously, and with much trepidation Akaru continued. Final containment. Upon this, Akaru launched into a flurry of hand signs that his men followed. Their chant filled the evening air and overwhelmed the peaceful chirps of crickets. Hitsuji, Inu, Tori, Seru, Na, Seru, Hitsuji, Tori, I, Tori, Mi, Na, Yu, Ushi, Tatsu, Yuma, Na, Seru, Tori, Ushi, Tora. The scrolls began to light up in the familiar neon green, and chakra strings sprouted from Akaru's body to each. The man was suddenly assaulted by the intense emotions of rage and hatred. Countless memories flooded through him as the three tails attempted to take over his mind and body. The thoughts were of the past, when the three tails attacked and destroyed countless vessels and villages upon a whim. It was showing Akaru its past in a hope to show him the power he could have if he would just allow the chakra to flow throughout him. The stalwart Anbu captain refused to give in, instead allowing the operation to continue as planned. To move the chakra from the 4 small scrolls to the large scroll, the squad was forced to have a medium between the two as the transfer happened. Of course, as leader, Akaru was the one to do the job. However, it would be impossible for his body alone to handle the full amount of the three tails' power. To this end, his men would extend chakra feelers and slowly take in portions of the three-tailed chakra from their leader as he took the vast majority. Through the combined strength of the squad, the three tails would falter. Akin to the Kyuubi, it would require dozens of mediums to handle the large amount of chakra beset on them by the tailed beast. Hold. Together. Akaru grunted and exerted encouragement. He slowly began to transfer what chakra he could handle into the larger scroll. It began to flash green as it slowly received the volatile chakra from the beast tamer. Although their bodies were strong, alone the tamers would not be able to hold the chakra, and it would inevitably consume them. To this end, a special seal had been placed on each of their masks, courtesy of the Uzumaki, to help contain the beast. In exchange for temporarily holding the majority of the chakra for the tamer, the mask would actually change shape. From its blank slate, the mask would morph into the shape of the animal of the tailed beast they sealed. Why must this take so long? We are defenseless at this point, hopefully no one else is in these woods. Lightning Country. Valley of Lightning and Thunder. Man, what this motherfucker think he was gonna do? Take B down? Yeah, right. B announced with much vigor, standing over the dismembered body of Kasama Hoshigaki. After a long and drawn-out battle, B and his fellow Cloud Nin had defeated the Akatsuki giant. After his sword's defection to B's side, Kasama had quickly been pierced by over a dozen swords, and his legs and arms completely chopped off by some careful Cloud Jonin. Feeling as though he might as well, B himself lead the group back to Kumo. He would tell his brother of yet another victory to go to B over the dreaded Akatsuki. As a token of victory, B took Samahata as his own personal weapon after the loss of his remaining swords. If he could see the head of Kasama's body, now submerged deep within a lake, he could see the bloody smirk that remained on the human shark's lips. End of Chapter 24. Chapter 25. Escalation of hostilities, tension. Land of Snow. Kazuhana Castle. Sugihara's bedchambers. The urge to sneeze, that was what woke Sugihara up. She leaned up in the comfortable bed and looked around, not remembering how she got there. The memories came back to her quickly, the discovery of her teammates and the Uzumaki picking her up and bringing her back to the castle. She smiled at the caring nature of Naruto. He didn't even have to bring her back, and he did. He even whispered those encouraging words to me. He told me I was strong, even when I had failed to protect my team. He didn't think about that. Her thoughts were interrupted by a light knocking on her door. She checked herself and blushed scarlet upon the discovery she had been dressed in a silk robe. Inappropriate thoughts of what the Uzumaki was doing while he was changing her flooded through her mind before she remembered the person at the door. Yes, please come in. The door creaked open and Naruto popped his head in, much to Sugihara's embarrassment. Ah. Good to see you up, Sugihara-san. I brought you some tea. Naruto walked in, still in his Anbu armor, carrying a tray of teacups. Sugihara blushed and looked away as he came closer and laid the plate down on her nightstand. Her room was luxurious as it was inside of the castle, lit by numerous lights hanging from the walls. Her bed was a large 4-post surrounded it and allowed her to pull a curtain around herself. Upon her arrival, she thought the idea silly to hide yourself in a bed. Now she was beginning to rethink her statement. Now I wasn't sure if you liked this tea or not, so I added a little Sue. He was interrupted when she slapped him on the cheek, enough to leave a mark. He turned towards her, astonished at what she had just done. Her gray eyes were wide in sudden recognition of who she had just hit and bowed her head low. The tears began to fall as she realized she had just insulted the Uzumaki, and she tried to explain. I'm sorry. Uzumaki-sama. How I got my clothes on. You brought me back. I just thought you were. And you act so nonchalant about it. Her arms protectively encircled around her chest as Naruto realized what she was trying to say. Oh, she thinks I'm a pervert or something, and took a peek. I may act like a pervert around Mei, but I wouldn't think of doing such a thing to one of my own shinobi. Ah, I understand, Sugihara. I'll leave you alone." Naruto got up from his position near her bed and moved to the door. As he prepared to leave, Sugihara looked up and watched. She couldn't bring herself to say anything because she was afraid it would only make things worse. What surprised her the most was when he smiled when he looked at her over his shoulder. "If it makes you feel any better, I had one of the female hurricanes change you, not me. Please rest, I'm going to take care of the rest of this rebellion so that you don't have to cry anymore." She didn't understand what he meant by that, but clearly saw her mistake of slapping him. She reached a hand out to stop him as he left out the door. "Wait. Uzumaki-sama. She quieted herself when she realized it was too late, he was already gone behind the shut door. Feeling even further in shame, she turned her head towards the tea. Despite herself, she smiled at the thought of the Uzumaki to personally bring her tea. She looked next to it and saw some tissues, also brought by the Uzumaki. From being outside for so long, she had indeed contracted a cold. Picking up the tea, she looked at her reflection in the warm liquid. Her tears made splashes as they hit the water, and she drank some of the concoction made by Naruto. Her face warmed upon the sweet taste, no doubt from the sugar added by the Uzumaki. Her tears began to fade as she drank more and more of the tea, slowly finding herself falling asleep. "Thank you. Uzumaki-sama." Kazuhana Castle. War Room. Naruto walked the halls as he left the room of Sugihara. He felt for her as he probably wouldn't have been able to bear the deaths of teammates either. He didn't want her to feel so sad though, he was going to make sure to avenge her comrades' deaths. That was what he was going to plan in the improvised war room made within the castle. Every loyalist who was left was there, along with Koyuki. Even though he had suggested she go to bed and get some rest, she refused. She wanted to be part of what he was doing, no matter what it entailed to bring her people back under her sway. In reality, very few of the people actually hated Koyuki enough to rebel. They were uncomfortable with her other job, yes, but not enough to kill her. So that means it is a small rebellion led by old Dotto supporters. Their first target must have been the spring generator, either destroying it or turning it off. That led them to have their ice release ability back, and that gave them the power to overthrow Koyuki. Looks like the primary battle is going to be at the generator itself. He could feel his shadows following him closely behind. As quiet as they were, Naruto had grown accustomed to sensing their presence. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't hide from their Uzumaki. He knocked on a door to gain access to the war room. Because they had only driven back the enemy attack and not routed them entirely, the castle was still on alert. Naruto had little doubt, though, that if the enemy attacked now with him there, they would be utterly destroyed. With the past few hours of quiet, it seemed as though they also had figured that out. Two samurai opened the door and peeked around the corner to confirm Naruto's identity. They moved to either side of the entrance and bowed as he walked inside. Their eyes just barely catching a glimpse of 6 blurs that entered right after him, culminating in the appearance of the cloaked hurricanes. The war room itself was quite barren, probably a room of storage before. Crates were stacked in the corners of the large stone room, and the few loyalists remaining sat on barrels or crates. Their eyes carefully tracked Naruto's movement over to the table in the center of the room that had a single map of snow on it. Koyuki sat at the head of the table in a large chair, a sad attempt by the samurai to emulate her throne. A battle-worn general stood next to the table, using small flags to indicate his forces and the enemies. From what Naruto could tell from the grimace on his face and the fact that each and every blue flag was surrounded by a dozen red ones was that they were in trouble. "General Kabuki." The man looked up to see Naruto approach, and he immediately saluted the Uzumaki. "Uzumaki-sama." Naruto looked at the map, placing a hand on his chin as he racked his brain for ideas. "It doesn't look like we are the winning side this time around, huh?" Naruto muttered, carefully observing each location and noticing the dire straits they were in. General Kabuki sighed, his voice worn and tired. "No, we most definitely aren't. Almost every single scout I still have left alive have reported in that droving war bands of these snow shinobi are taking over all the villages in the countryside. When the rebellion first started, our defense of the generator was heavy." He moved a finger to point at the location, now surrounded by over a dozen red flags. "The snow shinobi attacked with kunai and shuriken, while we fought back with sword and arrows. It was an even match before. Well before they attacked with the kunai guns. You see, we extended our railroad coverage after Daimyo Kazuhana was placed in charge of the country. It was of course for peaceful means, to facilitate and increase trade. The snow shinobi, however, were able to get their hands on an old weapons car and used it against us, right next to the generator. We never stood a chance. Naruto nodded. He remembered exactly what that thing had done to the rebels when he first came. Koyuki also visibly stiffened, remembering Sandayu's sacrifice at the hands of Dotu. It was still a sore spot for her, even if she had acted coldly at that point in time. After reflecting upon her past once she became daimyo, Koyuki quickly realized that Sandayu was the closest thing she had to a father during the majority of her life. Well then, looks like we need to move from here. Naruto picked up the blue flag that lay inside of the capital city and moved it over to the generator, a few miles away. To here and annihilate any resistance given by the snow shinobi. Once we get the generator operational again, they can be routed easily. The general was surprised at how confident and easy Naruto made it sound. With all due respect, sir, breaking out of the city is nigh impossible, let alone reaching the generator. For all we know, they could have destroyed it by now. We don't have the manpower to. Kabuki was cut off by a hand raised by Koyuki. She looked at Naruto. You must have confidence in the Uzukage. He would not have come to help without an idea or the strength to get the job done. He never goes back on his word. Right, Naruto? Naruto smiled at the young woman. She still remembered his ninja way. That's right, I have a plan too. First though. Naruto swept a hand down onto the map and made all the red flags fall around the capital city. He smirked. We have to take down all the guys that still threaten this castle. Hurricanes, you are with me. Let's go to the roof for a look. One of the hurricanes threw Naruto his red cloak and he placed it on to cover himself from the inevitable cold. Koyuki watched as he left, her smile radiated across the room. He was still like the same old Naruto that came to snow the first time, just a little more mature and better at hiding his excitable personality. She could tell that he was excited about the fight coming up, figuring it would be a great challenge. Her thoughts were interrupted by Kabuki. Ma'am, shouldn't some of my men go with him? I mean, this is our country, shouldn't we be trying to get it back too? Koyuki held her head in one hand as she thought about it. Of course we should, but I doubt Naruto needs our help. You would probably just get in the way. Kabuki recoiled, not expecting the negative comment. Naruto is in a league of his own. I dare say he could be the most powerful ninja alive. Koyuki whispered, a smile tugging at her lips. Kazuhana Castle. Roof. Naruto and his men quickly got onto the roof and he prepared for his plan. He made a dozen shadow clones and ordered them all to take out their three-pronged kunai. The hurricanes just stood there as Naruto ushered his clones into position around the building's roof. Ranmaru, I need you to pinpoint the location of every single snow shinobi inside and around the capital. Uzumaki and Hayo, you guys will stay here and protect the Ranmaru as they do this. The men were shocked by his order's magnitude. What will you do, sir? One of them asked. I will fight the snow shinobi head-on with my technique, just make sure you find every single one of them. I'm going to kill every single one. They shifted uncomfortably from his tone, he was actually quite frightening. Yes, Uzukage-sama. The two Ranmaru sat down and began to focus their chakra while the other four took up spots around them. Naruto's clones listened as they called out each and every location. Naruto's clones then threw themselves up into the air and showered the city with the kunai, spreading Naruto's influence everywhere. There would not be a single avenue of escape for the snow shinobi. Naruto unsheathed his trusty two-sided greatsword from his back and disappeared in a flash of light. It would be over in a second. What are these strange kunai? Asked one of the men on patrol around the castle. His superior came over and took a look at it for himself. Dunno. Did anyone see where it came from? Well, I think it came from. The man was interrupted when a loud gurgling sound was brought to their attention and they turned to face in its direction. They saw their leader, the one holding the kunai, now holding his throat in an attempt to stop the bleeding. There was no sign of the aggressor, but he couldn't have gone far. Out of a corner of their eyes a flash of light and a slash of steel was all that could be seen. They dropped like flies, unable to even utter a word of warning to the others. It did not matter though, there was no escape from the city. Kunai were spread everywhere, on roofs, through broken windows, on the street, lodged in bodies or armor. Naruto would find and finish them all, it was a mere token of payback for what they did to his men. Not once did Naruto feel pity for those he struck down, not once did he shed a tear for the traitors of spring. Land of Waves. Tazuna Lake. Almost there. The leader gasped out as he released a final dregs of demon chakra from his system into the scroll. Luckily, no one had arrived yet to interrupt them, and they were able to almost complete the sealing. It had been exactly 2 days since they had arrived. The men had been forced to handle the elements unprotected. They sat, both in rain and sun, going through hand signs and taking overwhelming pain. It brought a source of pride for the beast tamers to think they could do what others couldn't. Suddenly, it was over. Their masks reverted back to blank husks, and the scroll lit up with the kanji for contained. The leader quickly rolled up the scroll and slung it over his back. He did not like remaining in these woods without any backup. Let's move out. The 8 tamers dispersed, heading straight back to Yuzu. Only a few minutes later, the Konoha recovery squad arrived. They had asked the local populace where the lake's location was and only received angry glares and misdirection. Thanks to the locals, they were a day late behind schedule. Shizune and her team immediately got to work locating the beast, while Kakashi's team stayed on shore. He looked around suspiciously as he had felt chakra sources nearby when they arrived. There was also a strong taint of demon chakra near where he stood, although it could have been from the lake. Still, it was odd for others to be out here near such a dangerous place. I think someone else may have gotten here first. Was it Akatsuki? Kakashi-sensei, what are we supposed to do? The scarecrow turned to look at Rock Lee, a member of his squad. We are to protect the sealing team, keep watch around the lake for trouble. Rock Lee looked out on the lake and saw Sakura dutifully performing the barrier technique. Tenten sighed as hearts appeared in his eyes, and he sniffled in reverence to her beauty. If my duty is to protect my blossom, then it is my pleasure. Nothing will stand in the way of my burning passion of love. He was pounded on the head by an irate Tenten who was annoyed by his yelling. Shut up, Lee. Kakashi-sensei, can you please do something? Tenten turned around to find no Kakashi. Shino was standing off to the side, as if he didn't notice her stare. Where did Kakashi-sensei go? Shino looked over to her, finding it somewhat comical that she asked while holding a dazed Lee by the nape of the neck. He said he had some business to look into on the island and that he wouldn't be long. Also, I suggest you let go of Lee before he chokes to death. She turned around to see him growing blue in the face and gasped, releasing him from her death grip. Tenten, your blossom is so harsh to the touch. No matter how I attempt to approach it, it always pricks me with its thorns. Lee spoke of in a half-conscious daze, making Tenten look down at him blushing. Was he just hitting on me right there? I just can't understand this guy. Land of Waves. Forest. Ikaru pushed his men to move faster through the forest. He could easily sense a presence following them from the lake, and that meant they knew what happened. His men were exhausted and ineffective, but there was a chance that they could bluff the enemy into retreating. One of his men jumped closer to him on the path they were moving. Sir, you know there is an enemy approaching us? What are our orders? Ikaru continued to move forward until they reached a patch of grass. He flew down to the ground, and his men landed around him in a rough circle. He quickly made quick hand signals, and his men dispersed around the area and prepared scrolls for the aggressor. Ikaru remained in the middle of the green patch. He had replaced the actual beast scroll with one of his subordinates and instead had a disguised log. Kakashi appeared in the field and Ikaru visibly lowered his guard somewhat. The unique man looked familiar, as if the memory came flooding back to the captain. Wait, this man is that leaf shinobi at the Uzakage's wedding. What is he doing here? Wait. He might have orders to take the 3 tails from us. We have to remain on our guard. How do you do, Konoha-san? May I ask why you are following us? Kakashi had his hands in his pockets and his sharingan still hidden behind his headband. Kakashi shrugged as he nonchalantly looked around in the trees and sensed 7 other presences, although they cloaked themselves well. Yuzu Anbu, these guys are an interesting bunch. I suppose they already took the 3 tails and they are careful to see if I want it for the leaf. They are smart and cautious even in front of a potential ally. Naruto trained them well. I want to confirm that you have the 3 tails with you, is that true? Ikaru stiffened and Kakashi had his answer. He saw the beast tamer move for a scroll on his armor and held up a hand in defense, his eye in a crescent smile to act in a disarming fashion. Hey now, no need to go for hostilities. You may not be part of the 4-village alliance, but that doesn't make us enemies, does it? Ikaru wasn't convinced and scoffed at Kakashi's attempt at peace. This man is good, he has already sensed my men, and he has a sharingan underneath that damn headband. It would be great if we could take him down here, but combat isn't our forte, especially in our condition. Any village could want this tailed beast for its power. I doubt they would even be willing to tell the other villages that they have it in the first place. The Uzumaki told us to be wary of other villages' involvements, especially Konoha's. I have nothing to discuss with you either than to tell you to stop following us and allow us to get to Yuzu without your team's interference. Kakashi's eye went from a smile to a dead serious gaze into the hidden eyes of Hikaru. You know, it's impolite to get rid of a guest like that. I know that Wave has some sort of alliance with Yuzu, but that doesn't mean I can't walk on this ground here. On orders from my Hokage, I should grab that tailed beast from you. Forcibly if I have to. Hikaru tensed again, and his men prepared their backup plan. We have orders from our Uzumaki as well, we will not be stopped even if we must defeat one of his old friends. The two continued in a standoffish fashion for a while, neither moving. What can you do? Kakashi started to say as he took his hand off of his kunai holster and placed it back in his pocket, inclining his head down to look at the ground. When you do not wish to fight, but have orders from your leader to accomplish the objective, no matter what, even if it means war. Do you listen to your leader? Or do you listen to your heart? Hikaru thought the question was obvious, listen to your leader without question. You listen to the leader of your village, without question. Their wisdom is enough and their order is absolute, that is why we have ranking systems. Kakashi looked back up at Hikaru, and I smiled again. I'm sorry Anbu-san, the question actually was more to myself than to you. You know. I would have answered the same as you back when I was young. Now that I'm older though. I have a different outlook on that question. Would you like to hear it? Hikaru eyed the man carefully but nodded anyway. I believe it's better to listen to your heart in such a delicate situation. Your leader is not always right, and sometimes just one mistake can destroy a village. Or a friendship. I lost almost everything when I was young, but the one thing that stuck with me was the strength I received from relying on my comrades. That is why. Kakashi's seriousness shocked Hikaru as he listened enraptured by the man's heartfelt speech. I will not betray my comrade Naruto and attack you. I will no doubt be disciplined when I go home to Konoha, but if my decision saves us from war, I have done my job as a jonin. And. His eyes took a more reverent look. Hikaru was beginning to understand just what Kakashi was trying to say and felt the lesson resonate in his heart. His men were also very enraptured in the speech as Kakashi finished it. If my decision saves my friendship with Naruto that I treasure so dearly well, then I couldn't ask for more. Please be on your way Yuzu-san, I will keep my squads in the dark of our meeting. Hikaru could only watch in astonishment as the Sharingan user left without another word. He scratched the back of his head and just watched the direction his chakra moved, farther and farther away from them. His men assembled around him, and one of them handed him the real tailed beast scroll. Kakashi Hatake, interesting guy. The Uzumaki made a good choice in befriending him, however he did that, though, and how he got the bond to be so deep. I will never know. What does this mean, sir? Asked one of his men, to which Hikaru chuckled. I think we just got permission to go back home. Let's go. Land of Waves. Tazuna Lake. Shizune and her squad had already given up on trying to find the tailed beast, it was as if it was completely missing. The two squads were now on shore waiting for Kakashi to come back. With little else to do, they were going to have to go home in failure. Our intel could have been off, right Shizune? Sakura suggested to her squad leader, only to hear her sigh in exasperation. I'm not so sure Sakura, somehow I get the feeling someone got here first. The squads shifted uncomfortably, thinking of the possibility of Akatsuki nabbing another tailed beast when they could have stopped them. Now whatever could give you that idea? The group of shinobi turned to see Kakashi nonchalantly come out of a tree and give a little wave. Yo. Kakashi-sensei, where have you been? Sakura yelled in his ear, leading him to pick at it a little in mocking Sakura. Sorry, got lost on the road of life. By the way, I don't really think Akatsuki took the tailed beast. Our intel suggests they still didn't know of its location. Hinata coughed a little, bringing Kakashi to look at her in curiosity. Something to add, Hinata? She blushed at acknowledgement but nodded anyway, raising her voice slightly to be heard. What? Makes you say that Kakashi-sensei? Kakashi scratched the back of his head in an attempt to think of something to say. I can't betray Naruto's trust, but I don't really feel like being thrown in jail either. Let's just say I have a hunch that it is in a safe place. They looked at one another, everyone in confusion, and not really buying it. Now come on, how about I treat you all to some food in town before we head back? Choji quickly jumped on that idea. All right. Let's go, I can't wait to see the restaurants this place has got. Kakashi was thankful they had the Akamichi on the team. His announcement made everyone forget about his words before. Shizune eyed Kakashi suspiciously as he began to walk off with the rest of the squad. There was obviously something stressed in his story, something she couldn't put her finger on though. He turned to look at her, recognition crossing his face as he realized just what she was thinking. Coming, Shizune? She woke up and saw Kakashi lagging behind to wait for her. She blushed in embarrassment before running to catch up. Yes, Kakashi-san. I will have to speak with Lady Tsunade. Uzumaki. Uzumaki compound. Inner estate. Mei gently rocked Rashi to bed, or at least tried to. She and her son were sitting in the family room, and he just wouldn't stop crying. The morning after Naruto left, he just wouldn't stop crying, and it led her to believe that her little boy was a daddy's boy. She smirked at the thought. SHHHH. Please stop crying, baby. Daddy's coming back soon, mommy promises. He quieted down for a few moments and led Mei to sigh in happiness with the quiet. She soon realized that it was only to catch his breath as he began a new crying fit. Mei stood up and began to pace around the room, purposely exaggerating her walking to bounce him up and down. His tears turned into cries of joy as he smiled for the first time in the past few days. His mother smiled and kissed his forehead with affection only a mother could show. Thank you, baby, mommy's so happy that you stopped crying. Now I can feed you. Mei sat back down and undid her shirt to reveal a swelled breast, to which her son again cried in joy. He is such a pervert. Just like his father. She sighed in happiness as the baby began to suck, filling the house with the quiet smacking sounds of his mouth against her nipple. The tension had grown in her breasts from swelling so much, she was sure Naruto would joke that they were Tsunade's size when he came back. She would have to make sure he fed from her as well just to get rid of the pain. The doctors said it wouldn't last forever, but it sure likes to drag on and on. Oh Rashi. Why can't you be big already? While the baby himself was plump, it was a cakewalk for her to hold and care for him. She was sure it would be difficult for a small child to hold him, but he would eventually work off all that fat when she and Naruto began to train him in shinobi arts. Mei really couldn't wait either, she knew her son would be strong just like his father. Her thoughts came to an end when there was a loud knocking on the door. She stood up and quickly headed upstairs to place the baby in his crib. He wasn't happy to have his feeding cut short, but somehow knew to keep quiet. Mei swiftly moved downstairs to the door and carefully began to open it in case of an unknown intruder. To her surprise, the loud knocking was because of the visitor's large hands. Yamara stood before her, the first lava monkey she had come into contact with personally. He was smiling, or at least as far as Mei could tell with his animal face. Hello Matriarch-sama, it has been some time since I last laid eyes on you. How have things been since that ritual you did a few days ago? Mei smiled at the monkey's friendly attitude. Well, Narukoi had to leave for a mission in spring, so he hasn't been here for the past few days. She was surprised when Yamara beat his fist into the ground angrily. What? That is totally inappropriate for the alpha of your troop to leave so soon, especially after the infant's birth. Unacceptable. If you will pardon my language, Matriarch-sama. Mei waved his concerns off, she actually agreed with the large red ape. I don't like him leaving the village either, but we both have accepted it's necessary for the moment. With our manpower so low, Naruto's strength is needed on missions outside of the village. Yamara still looked combative on the subject. Yes, but still, it is inappropriate for. Mei held up a hand for quiet, to which the monkey reluctantly obeyed her wishes. Mei gave an innocent smile to the summon. Thank you for your concern, Yamara, but it really isn't necessary. Naruto promised me that he would never leave me for as long as he draws breathe. This village is his home. He will protect it with his life, just as anyone living here would attest to the same thing. He said it relates to something from Konoha. The will of fire. He jokingly referred to it as the strength of the vortex. Yamara smiled, Mei really made a good female for Naruto-sama, so understanding of his position. Well, I'm sure you didn't come here just to talk, Yamara, what would you like to know? The monkey seemed confused until he suddenly remembered his original purpose. Ah yes, I wanted to talk to Naruto-sama actually, but since the patriarch isn't here. Well, I suppose I can talk to you and have you tell him for me? Mei giggled and nodded, encouraging the monkey to continue. Yes, what is your message, Yamara? He turned somewhat serious all of a sudden, clearing his throat and standing somewhat straighter. Mei could see the sudden change and also became serious. Please, Mei-sama, you must be uncomfortable standing on your porch. At least sit down as my message might take a while. Mei shrugged and sat down in front of the monkey, who in turn decided to sit as well. Now, if you may remember, the first time Naruto-sama summoned me, I relayed to you the status of the island. I also gave you some background on the lava monkeys and mentioned something of training. Mei racked her brain to remember. Yamara waited patiently until her face came to sudden recognition. Ah yes. I remember now, you mentioned something of lava training? Harnessing geothermal energy or something along those lines, right? Yamara nodded excitedly, glad she remembered after so much time. Yes, Matriarch-sama, I came here to bring the good news to Naruto-sama that it is now the time for such training. We are not blind, we have heard and seen the destruction the Akatsuki, as you call them, have wreaked in the world. While we will willingly fight alongside you, we could not bear to see Naruto-sama go into battle with their leader if we could do something to make him stronger. Mei pondered this information. He could make her Naruto stronger? So this training, you make it sound as if it is quite a strength booster? What exactly does it entail, and why is Naruto the only one to have it suggested to? Has anyone else done this before? Yamara was hit by the barrage of questions like a brick and panicked. Mei giggled at his confusion. Just answer one at a time please, Yamara, we have plenty of time. The monkey took a moment to collect himself before continuing. Yes, Matriarch-sama, it is a strength booster, but it is much more. It can further boost his ninjutsu, genjutsu, and taijutsu to enormous levels and gives him a larger reservoir of chakra to call on. It also includes a protective layer of lava over his entire body, protecting him from physical attacks. Mei thought it sounded too good to be true. It also looked like Yamara was hesitant to continue. Why is Naruto the only one so far asked, and who else has done it? Yamara gulped and shifted his body uncomfortably. Well, you see. The risks are great for Patriarch-sama. The previous ones who have tried have all died. Mei's eyes widened in surprise, and she physically recoiled from the monkey, as if he was poisonous. What did you say? She asked quietly. Yamara could hear the obvious disbelief in her voice though. I meant to say. Those who have tried to attain perfect avatar form have died horrible deaths. You see, the final trial entails fully submerging oneself in the lava of a volcano, and well, that is obviously very lethal to humans. Mei began to glare at Yamara, making him shrink even further. No. I refuse to allow my husband to do something like that. Yamara was shocked. He began to stutter in argument. Boo-boo, but Matriarch-sama, surely you realize the importance of the try. He was stopped when Mei raised her voice further. No. I have said no, I will not allow my husband to risk everything just like that for some power that he already doesn't need. We have a child now, I don't want to lose him, and I know our baby doesn't. Yamara could do nothing against that. He decided to at least put up a front for a little longer though. But Mei would have none of it and pointed at the door that would lead him out of the clan head's compound. Out now. The seriousness of her tone made any thought of argument nil. Yamara bowed in apology as he headed out. Excuse me for my rudeness, Mei-sama, I only wished to help. With that over with, Mei entered the house, only to hear her baby crying again. She ran up to the room to find him in his crib, probably awoken from his mother's loud voice. Mei picked him up and began to rock him, laying kisses all over his face. He opened her eyes and showed her the beautiful blues she had fallen in love with 5 years ago. SHHH. Everything's fine, baby. Mommy isn't mad, she just had to make the big bad monkey leave. Her rocking settled the baby down, who began to mewl. Mei looked up as she continued to talk to the baby and unknowingly to herself. Daddy isn't going anywhere. Mommy won't let him do something stupid like that. Daddy isn't leaving us. No, he isn't. She knew Naruto would be combative, but she would stand her ground on this subject. Patriarch of the family be damned, the Uzumaki woman was not about to let her man die a needless death. Land of snow. Outskirts of heat generator. Naruto had led his party over the stretch of snow to the generator with his strength and anger alone. He had not allowed anyone else to partake in the battle, only allowing himself to do the fighting. While the Hurricanes were concerned, they had to admit the Uzukage could make progress. He had already killed over 100 enemy shinobi, and his kill count was continuing. It seemed as if his anger over losing men had consumed him, even though he still acted quite friendly to his men when he took a few minutes of break. The teleporting actually did not use much chakra at all, it was the physical toll on his body that was getting to him. While the snow shinobi were completely helpless to his assault, Naruto's large sword was still very tiring to use in such a long amount of time. Because of his anger, He was also needlessly butchering them more than he had to. An extra swing here, cutting off the optional appendage there, it was too much for the Uzumaki to handle. We're almost there, push forward. Naruto threw a kunai into the chest of one shinobi, only to teleport into the group that had followed behind him. No survivors were left. The entourage following him, the hurricanes and a small group of warriors sent by Koyuki, could only step over the bodies and watch helplessly as he continued his rampage. One of the loyalist snow shinobi politely nudged one of the hurricanes and pointed towards the avatar of destruction that was fighting atop a literal mound of dead snow shinobi bodies. He ducked under a kunai throw and burned through an ice jutsu with his lava attack. Is he always like this? The hurricane only shook their head negatively. This was the first time they had seen the Uzumaki so ruthless. I believe losing his men affected him more than we had foreseen. It just shows how big of a heart the Uzumaki has. The snow shinobi merely nodded in agreement, absently fearing that the Uzumaki might confuse him as a traitor with his uniform on. As they approached the large pillars that surrounded the heat generator, they found that it was miraculously intact. It appeared as though the snow shinobi had merely shut it down, not destroyed it as they had at first thought. Naruto soon realized that the snow shinobi were either all dead or had begun to retreat as he struck down what seemed to be the last one. As he approached the generator, he felt a rumbling and began to sense chakra at his feet. His eyes widened in recognition as he remembered just where he had first seen this, back on his first visit to Snow. He turned around to warn the unsuspecting others. Get out of here. The enemy are using the railways. The Yuzu shinobi were confused, but the loyalist Snow were not. They quickly began to run uphill to escape the coming attack. The hurricanes quickly followed suit, leaving Naruto as the only one standing on the tracks. He saw a tunnel, hollowed out from ice making up a mountain, illuminated by an oncoming train. He bit his thumb and went through the summoning hand signs, calling on a massive amount of chakra to come forth. Summoning technique. A large puff of smoke, something akin to Gamabunta's size, appeared to Naruto's side. He looked up in wonder as the smoke disappeared to find a three-tailed lava monkey. Its tail swished around in confusion, and its back was covered in crimson fur showing its place as a dominant troop member. Who has summoned me? Naruto quickly ran up its arm and stood on top of the lava monkey's head. At first, the monkey was annoyed that some human just nonchalantly ran up on his head. Upon looking up and seeing the face of the human though, his demeanor quickly changed to that of a respectful one. Uzumaki-sama, it is good to see you. What have you summoned the boss monkey, Yakyo, for? Naruto pointed towards the ice tunnel, where the train was beginning to emerge. On its presence, course it would run straight into the lava monkey's feet. I want your help taking that thing out. Yakyo looked down at the diminutive human machine and chuckled. The monkey cracked his knuckles and stood at the ready. As you wish, Uzumaki-sama. The monkey picked up the lead train car and threw it onto the ground, permanently derailing that ride for the traitors. The monkey looked ready to squash each car with its foot when Naruto stopped it with a stressed cry. No, don't. They might attempt to blow up the train or something if you try something like that. Let's finish it off from a distance. Yakyo seemed to take it into consideration before deviously smirking. I like the way you think, Patriarch-sama. They both went through simultaneous hand signs before launching a sheet of lava over the entire train. Lava release, melting apparition wave. The lava covered the entire train and began to melt the entire train and its occupants. Naruto could not hear their cries from his elevation and did not care to. He instead just sat there on Yakyo's head, watching the destruction with a sharp glare. As the attack dissipated and the train was nothing but ash, Naruto jumped off the monkey's head and headed down to the generator around the large mirrored pillars. Yakyo remained as the others came down from uphill and stood near the Uzumaki. Naruto attempted to turn it on by turning the key that Koyuki had at one point worn around her neck. His eyes widened in surprise when the key broke, lodging what was left of the stone inside of the key permanently. No. The keystone. Without it, we will never return to spring. The snow shinobi began to cry. They believed the mission failed. Naruto had to admit it was a dirty final trick by the traitors. However, they had not expected there to be a lava user amongst those who came to Spring's rescue. Naruto signaled for the two Uzumaki hurricanes to follow him back over to Yakyo. They all climbed on top of his head and discussed Naruto's formulated plan. What can we do, Uzumaki-sama? They asked, wanting to do whatever they could to help. What must be done to melt ice and warm a land? What defeats ice? Pure and simple. Remember, that heat generator was all that was needed to warm spring again. The two hurricanes racked their brains for a moment, as did Yakyo, before he began to laugh loudly. You are a shrewd man, Patriarch Sama. I can see now why the Uzumaki have put you in charge of the village. The two hurricanes were still confused, while Naruto just smiled and petted the top of Yakyo's head. Thank you, Yakyo, I'm glad you can see the beauty and simplicity. What are you planning to do, Uzukage-sama? Naruto smirked as he explained. We will pool our chakra together and create a large volcano here at the center of snow. It will spread the lava under the earth and mix with the dormant heat stored beneath spring, leading it to warm up. Let's see those bastards try and sabotage a volcano. The hurricanes nodded in agreement. It was a simple, but in theory correct plan. Alright, all together now, go through the right hand signs. The humans dropped to the ground and simultaneously went through over 40 hand signs before stopping and slamming their hands onto the ground. It began to shake as Yakyo slammed his own onto the ground, leading to a small earthquake from his size. Lava release, volcano eruption. The ground began to tremble until the earth began to rise up high into the sky to form the basis of the volcano. The chakra quickly mixed and created lava within, and it melted through the earth and ran all under spring. The change was unnoticeable at first, but slowly over the next hour, the snow began to melt away and reveal spring. The snow shinobi cheered and the hurricanes applauded their Uzukage for a brilliant plan. The sun revealed itself from the previously gray skies, and Naruto was given the front row seat to the sight of dozens of bloody pools of bodies surrounding him. He gulped and felt an odd feeling in his stomach before immediately throwing up at the sight. The shinobi around him quickly flocked to his aid, surprised by his reaction. I can't believe I did that. I killed them all? I killed them all. Didn't I? His eyes were quivering, and it looked as though he would heave again. I'm sorry, Uzukage-sama, but yes, you did. You said we should not interfere. You were protecting us by taking on the responsibility yourself. Naruto looked at the hurricane that explained, his eyes tearing up. I was so taken over by hatred. Has Kyuubi really taken over me? The hurricane smiled under her mask. She of the Ranmaru could not detect a single trace of Kyuubi's influence. No sir, I could see with my own eyes that Kyuubi held no sway over you. Naruto looked even worse after that. So? I enjoyed this. Doing this with my own anger? I'm a monster. She set a hand on his shoulder, as did the other hurricanes, to reassure him he was wrong. No sir, you just care so much for your fellow shinobi. You are willing to take any means necessary to protect us. Since you failed to protect the three Anbu of Sugihara's squad, you took it upon yourself to be their harbinger of justice, so to speak, and killed those you found guilty. You have done nothing wrong, Uzukage-sama. Naruto collapsed onto the ground, physically and emotionally exhausted. The hurricanes quickly picked him up and began to take him back to Koyuki's castle. Yakyo smiled as they walked away and dispersed himself back home. Patriarch Sama. He had such a big heart it even surprised him. Kazuhana Castle. Rebuilt, throne room. So Naruto, what may I do to repay Uzumaki-ra's overwhelming service to Spring? Koyuki asked Naruto, who stood before her throne. He remained in Spring for the next few days after his victory at the generator to make sure everything went according to plan. While waiting for Koyuki to calm the populace, Naruto and his hurricanes dispersed across the country and repaired any damages caused by them or the snow shinobi. It made the Spring citizens to enjoy the Uzumaki company very much. Sugihara also had recovered from her sickness and stood with Naruto's hurricanes ready to return home. Naruto smiled as she posed the question. While he did not like to think he had such a high power over someone as he did in this particular situation, it still felt good. Well, there are a few things that Yuzu no Kuni would appreciate if you could do for us. Koyuki inclined her head and slightly waved her hand to signal him to continue. Anything, Naruto, I promise to help you in any way I could. Naruto kept his smile as he explained their top needs. I seem to remember your country produced chakra armor. Would you still happen to have the schematics for the design? It would be much appreciated if we could work with you and set up a trading contract for it. Also, your country is highly industrialized, and I wish to know if I could borrow some of your engineers to come to my own country and help us incorporate technology into our city. Last but not least, I wish to expand the Yuzu presence here and establish a permanent recruiting center for shinobi here. It will be similar to a hidden village, except it will be smaller, and the shinobi will only come to Uzumaki for advanced training if they wish. Think of it as your own personal defense force dedicated to you by Yuzu. Koyuki seemed to think over the terms for a few moments while her flustered advisors were about to talk her into saying no. Done, done, and done. I actually was going to ask something similar to your third term anyway, so I'm glad it worked out. Please feel free to come visit us sometime here in spring, Naruto. We already named that volcano after you. Before you know it, you will be the talk of all of spring. Naruto smiled as he placed his cloak back on and covered his face with the hood. I'll look forward to it, Koyuki-chan. See ya. With his goodbye said, Naruto and his men disappeared, leaving a blushing Koyuki. Bastard, if only he wasn't married. Uzumakage's bedchambers. Naruto arrived in Yuzu a few days after his departure and returned feeling much more refreshed. He was actually quite homesick and wanted to see his family after being gone for more than a week. He had received the news from Ikaru that the capture had been successful, in no small thanks to Kakashi Hatake. He stored the three tails inside the old vault he had found his Kage robes in, thinking it the safest place for such a delicate treasure. Upon his return, Mei had been ecstatic. There was something off about her though, Naruto sensed. She seemed tense after something, as if an argument went on. He couldn't put his finger on it specifically though. Right now, Naruto sat at his desk within their bedchambers. His wife was busy putting on her nightgown, and he was in only his boxers. Their baby was sound asleep, and all that was left to do was to go to bed themselves. Naruto was contemplating the future war against Akatsuki, while Mei continued to fret over Naruto discovering what she kept from him. She had cried many times when he was away, arguing with herself on whether she should let him know or not. In the end, she decided she would not tell him, and if he did find out, she would personally forbid him from following through on it. The tense atmosphere between them was mainly emanated from Mei though. Her awkwardness was slowly pushing Naruto away, and her cheerful personality was riddled with guilt over lying to her husband. He decided to get into bed without her and lay there, waiting for her to come out. When she exited, Naruto smiled at her chosen attire. It was a short, provocative night dress that revealed all of her legs and almost all of her cleavage. She laid down with a mask of happiness that Naruto immediately recognized but played off as nothing. He ran his hands up and down her arm, sensuously rubbing her arms in an attempt to entice her into sex. Mei was not in the mood, though for the first time in their relationship, her stress was too much to think about. Naruto did not seem to take the hint and Mei rolled over and whispered good night. I'm sorry Naruto, but I don't feel like it tonight. Naruto was surprised, no, shocked at her response. Not once had they been like this, he had to truly wonder what had happened while he was gone. He knew better than to approach Mei when she was in such a mood though, rolling over himself to face in the opposite direction. All right then, good night. He immediately fell asleep, albeit troubled with the situation. Mei had lied when she said she was asleep and rolled over to look at him. This was the first time he had not wrapped his arms around her, she felt so lonely. She regretfully reminded herself though that it was mainly her fault, being so Uzumaki stubborn over something like this. It took all her willpower to remind her just why she was acting this way and ended up crying herself to sleep. I'm sorry Naruto, but this has to be done. I don't like it either but if I don't want to lose you then I have to stay strong. Kirigakure. Secret meeting room. So, the Snow Rebellion was a failure? Madara asked rhetorically, having already heard Zetsu's report. The spy grimaced at his failure and how Madara blatantly pointed it out. Yes sir, I was able to incite a rebellion amongst the populace, but the Uzukage himself came to the daimyo's rescue. He was able to completely crush them single-handed and brought heat back to them, even after I broke the dam generator. I failed sir. Madara shifted in his chair a bit, pondering out loud his thoughts. Naruto Uzumaki, huh? What a pest. Let's just hope Sasuke and Kasama accomplish their objectives. End of chapter 25.